Hi everyone! For today's Valentine series cards, we are going to make some slimline cards. So I have been having so much fun making slimline cards lately. You can make them yourselves just by measuring your cardstock by 8.5 by 4, or you can buy these dies like I did. They're called slimline dies, and I purchased mine from Trinity Stamps. There are some other stamp companies as well that have these, but these are just the ones that I found. So let's go ahead and get started with our first of 4 cards that we are going to make in this new slimline style. So this first card is using some products by Simon Says Stamp. So this is the Christmas Gnome die, but we are going to dress up our little Christmas gnome for Valentine's Day. So I used some pattern paper that I had on hand. I don't think it's made anymore, but you don't need this particular pattern to make this card, just any pattern paper that you like. And then I cut out the beard on some fog cardstock, and I'm just adding some detail with my warm gray copic markers here just to make it more realistic. And the nose, I'm using some peony pink cardstock by Hero Arts that I also just add a little copic coloring to. And I pop the nose up so that it kind of sticks up from the beard, so it's nice and dimensional. And the little shirt is cut out in that peony pink cardstock as well by Hero Arts. And this is what the little guy looks like when he's all done. All right, so now we have to make a card for our little gnome to sit on. So I am using the You Are Loved die by Simon Says Stamp. This is a new release item, and it is perfect for Valentine's Day, but I think also any occasion when you want to tell a loved one that they are loved. And I love the thin sentiment, and I love that there is also that background die cut that you could add as well, so that if you have a busy pattern paper, you can always put some white cardstock behind your sentiment to make the sentiment stand out. So I am taking 2 slimline die cuts using my scalloped slimline die cut, and I'm going to put everything onto a card base that I just made. And then we are going to pop up our little gnome on some foam tape, and we are going to put 2 layers of foam tape behind the sentiment, and we will adhere the sentiment first towards the bottom of our slimline card, and then we are going to pop the little gnome right underneath the You Are Loved. And that is going to finish our first card right after we add this cute little heart here. So here's card number 1, our cute little Valentine's gnome. I just love him. I think this is so adorable and a great card for Valentine's Day. And moving on to card number 2, we are going to make a copic colored card using the Valentine Cats and Only You stamp sets by Gerda Steiner Designs. So these 2 sets were just released. They're part of Gerda Steiner's Valentine's release, and they are just adorable. So we are just going to stamp our images and then mask them with some Simon Says Stamp masking paper, and then we'll jump right into the coloring. So I thought it would be nice to have a peachy pink background here that's kind of ombre that fades to a really, really light color as we get towards the bottom. So I'm just using some R markers here to achieve that effect. And every time I add a new marker, I kind of go back and blend in the marker that I had used just before with that marker, just to keep the gradient nice and clean. So we are done with that. Now we're going to add a couple more stamps. So I love these little heart little banners, or I guess they're like heart confetti. Not sure what you would call it. But they're adorable. So I just added those in between our little kitties, leaving some room at the top so that we can add our sentiment later. And now we will start coloring in the little kitty. So this little guy at the top, we're going to color in with some warm grays. And later on, we will go back and add some stripes to him after he dries a little bit. And I'm being sure to leave the shadows on the outsides of his face, leaving the inside pretty light. And we are going to use that same method for this little kitty here, except we're going to color him in with some cool grays. So if you are ever wondering what's the difference between warm gray and cool gray, if you just look at this little kitty in the middle and then the kitty in the upper right hand corner, well, that answers your question. So warm gray is more of a brownish tone color, whereas the cool gray has more of like a bluish undertone to it. So the warm is pretty warm. Well, the warm gray is warm and the cool gray is cool. I guess that says it in its name. Anyway, so now we're going to color our little kitty at the bottom, who is just playing in a pile of hearts, and we're going to color him with some yellow orange colors. So I'm going to use a combination of yellows and yellow oranges, and then some red tones, like peachy pink tones, for the little pads of his paws and the insides of his ears. And I'm going to center my shading towards the bottom of the body that's coming up out of the little pile of hearts, and then the edges of the body. And then we'll also give some definition to his chin there by adding a little line separating the chin from the body. Now I'm just blending everything together with some lighter yellow reds. And now we can go back and start adding some little stripes to our little kitty in the upper right hand corner. And I'm just using a warm gray marker in a darker shade than we used to color him in for the little stripes. And I'm just making like little triangle shapes around the head. And then we're going to do the same thing for our little kitty on the bottom. We're going to give him some like reddish brown stripes so that they stand out from his orange coat. And we're going to use some E15 and E17 there for the stripes. And I love that the way the shading in the middle turned out, it makes him look like he's a little bit of a chubby cat there. That little line under the chin just, I don't know, makes it look like he's got some extra body going on there. I just think it's cute. Now I'm just coloring in his tail and adding some stripes to the tail. And then we can start coloring in our little hearts. And for the hearts, since there are so many hearts going on here, I tried to color each of the heart elements in different red shades. So for these hearts that are encircling our little kitties, we're going to use some R12, R14, and then some R27 as our darkest shade. So this is going to give us kind of like an orangey light red. And then we're going to use some darker reds elsewhere when we're coloring hearts, and I'll show you that in a second. We're going to shade in this little kitty's heart the same exact way with that R12 going around the head. So it looks like there's a little bit of a glow coming out from him. And then we will follow up with some R14 and just blend that in. And then some R27 around the edges for our darkest shade. And then I'm just going to go backwards and blend all the shades inwards. So back with the R17, going towards the middle, and then with the R14, and then just leaving the slightest bit of R12 right around the head. And now for our little heart banners, I'm going to put a little highlight of YR12 in the center. And then I'm going to add my shading to the right edges with an R39. So this is going to be a really deep, strong red. I thought that would help to balance out the card, since we have the lighter shade hearts above and below the banners. I thought it would be good to have some really, really dark red in between there. And then I'm going to blend everything inwards towards the middle with the R29. And I'm only putting one coat here because these are really small images and there's a bunch of them. So I didn't want them to bleed out of the edges. And then just finish off with an R24. And then we'll just reinforce that little highlight with a little dab of R12, YR12 in the center of the hearts. And then we're going to do the same for the hearts in this little heart pile here. They're going to be with our deep red color. So I'm going to color them the same way that we just colored the banner, except I'm going to use a little bit more R39 here so that these hearts stand out as well. And I'm just using that R39 on those tiny little hearts in the pile just to make sure that they stand out and pop a little bit against the background. At the end, we're going to add some white highlights as well to help add a little bit of pop of color to little hearts here. And then once we're finished, I'm going to stamp a few more hearts. So I'm going to do about 5 more little clusters there. And I'm going to use even lighter reds here. So this is R05, and this is a real orangey red shade. It's very light and bright. And I just thought that it would be good because it's a different red tone than the other 2 reds we've used so far. So it'll also help to make these little floating hearts stand out a little bit. And now we can peel off the masking tape, and I just love how crisp and clean that white scallop border is after you pull the tape off. Just be really, really careful doing that so you don't rip your paper. And then we're going to use the Happy Valentine's Day sentiment from the Gerda Steiner stamp sets, and I use black VersaFine ink there, and then some pink peony cardstock for the base from Hero Arts. And now this is the little white highlights that I'm going to add just to make that little pile of hearts pop, and then we'll add a little highlight on each of the floating hearts. And that is going to complete our design. So that is our second slimline design for Valentine's Day. Let's go ahead and move on to card number 3. So this is a stamp set by Avery Elle. It's called Shark Hugs, and it is also part of their Valentine's Day release. And we are going to stamp the rose first and then mask it. And then we're going to stamp that little shark right behind there, so it looks like he's holding the rose. And then we're going to give him an ocean scene. So we're going to put little Valentines at his foot, and then a little Valentines and a little heart that are going to be buried in the sand. I'm going to show you how to achieve that effect when we do the coloring. And now let's start with our background. So all of our images are masked, and I'm just going to work from the bottom to the top with our color gradient. We're going to use E31 and 30 for the sand, and then BG10, BG000, BG01, and then I'm going to blend those 2 layers together with some BOO, and then BG13 for the very top, and then some BG45 to help blend everything together, BG01, and then we're going to work our way down. So B00, and then back through the gradient. So this is one of my favorite ways of making these gradient backgrounds like this. It's always good to add 2 layers of color, and I like to either start at the top and then end at the top. So I'll go top to bottom and then bottom to top, or in this case we went bottom to top and then top to bottom, but it's always good to have 2 layers of color. And now we're going to color in our shark, and I am using some toner grays for our shark. I think that this is a great color for a shark. It's a real like metallic type of gray color, and I guess I pulled it out. I was getting a little bit tired of my warm grays and my cool grays from the second card, so I wanted to try a different gray family, but any gray would work. If you really like the look of this, the warm grays is the closest in color to the toner grays. And I am going to color everything in with a light toner gray, and then we'll make our shadows with the darker one. So I'm focusing my shadows on the little areas of the body where there are creases, or where like the overhang, like underneath his arm, that's going to be a little shadowed. Where the fin attaches, there's going to be some shadow there because I assume there's like a little crease. And then the outer edge of his arm, kind of where it's behind his body, we're going to make that a little darker. And then I always like to make the outline around the body pretty dark too, just to help set the image off against the background. And now I'm just going to blend everything together with a T3, leaving a little white area in the center that I will go over with my T1. And then for the inside of the mouth, I'm just using that E04. And then some RV34 as the contrast, or the darker shade there. So E04 is one of those shades that just kind of sits alone by itself. There's nothing like really before it or after it that's similar. So you have to kind of go through your Copic collection to figure out what colors you would use to shade with it. And I found that RV34 works pretty well as a shading color for the E04. Okay, for the little rose, we're going to color in the stem with some greens, and then we're going to make the rose itself. I mean, I use way too many colors for this, but I just want to have fun, and roses can have lots of different colors in them, right? So I'm using some yellow, some orange, some peach, some red, some dark red. I really fussed a lot. And then I'm just going to put a simple red heart on the little letters. And then we have our little bitten hearts here. We have one that I'm going to show you how to make it look like it's buried in the sand. So when I stamped this image, I masked off the bottom part of it, of that little heart that's on the bottom of the ocean. And the reason I did that was so that we could put a little pile of sand around it to make it look like it's buried. So that is one method that you can use if you want to make, I don't know, something look like it's kind of sticking out from the ocean floor. It's a nice look if you're adding seashells to your scenes to make it look like the seashell is kind of hanging half in and half out of the sand. So our letter, I didn't mask that off that well, so our little letter is just going to be sitting on top of the mound. And then for our heart, the trick is you just make a bunch of little dots, and I like to start with my lightest dots just to map out the area where I'm going to put my little mounds of sand. And then I go back with my darkest shade, which in this case was an E37. And then I make the tiniest dots that are the closest to the image with that dark shade. And then I work my way outward with an E35, then an E34. And with each shade, I add a little bit more, and I make my dots a little bit bigger, and I make them extend a little bit further out. So that's kind of the method to the madness there. And then for this little the forefront of the scene, I'm just wanting to make it look like there's a little sandy mound there at the very bottom of the scene. So I'm just making the sand kind of go up both edges of the card there. And I'm making sure that my little mounds aren't perfect and that they kind of taper off into points. And then as we get farther back into the ocean, so those are the little mounds that are higher up on the page, I use lighter and lighter copic markers so that they almost disappear into nothingness. And that's how to create the illusion that something is farther away from us. And I probably spent way too much time decorating the bottom of this ocean scene. But, you know, if something I like to do is having fun, sometimes that's a good enough reason to pay extra attention to something that maybe otherwise you wouldn't. And I'm just going to fix my color gradient a little bit. And then the magic, we get to peel off the masking tape and we have that perfect white border. And now for the sentiment, it's going to say, Valentine, I choose you. And I stamped it in a wonky fashion. Just because it's kind of a wonky card, I thought it fit. And then I added a little sentiment to each of those hearts. Those are all included in the Shark Hug stamp set. So it says, hug me, love me, and then be mine. So cute. So Valentine, I choose you. That is card number 3. All right, so moving on to card number 4. This is our last card. This is a stamp by Trinity Stamps. They are also the card manufacturer that makes the slimline dies that I am using in this video. And this is the Octopus Oracle, or the Oracle Octopus stamp set. And we are going to make another ocean scene, but this time with some dark blue shades. The last scene, we used some turquoise blues. I'm going to make my gradient with my B90. So I started from B99 and just worked my way down to B97, B95, B93, B91, and then I started adding some other blues. So we have some B21, some B00, and then some BG10, which is always the color I like to use to separate the sand from the water, and then E30 and E31. And I'm going to peel the masking tape off of our little octopus here, and then just fill in the little areas that were hidden by the mask. So it looks like there's sand there as well. Then I'm just putting a little shadow underneath her, underneath our little fortune teller octopus. So when I was coloring in this image, I didn't realize that she's wearing a little fortune teller's hat. So I just colored it in the same octopus color that I'm coloring in the rest of the octopus. But then when you look at the photo at the beginning and the end of this video, you'll see that at some point I wisened up and realized that that was a little fortune teller hat, not her head. So in the pictures, you'll see that she has this really, really pretty dark red hat, and the dark red colored very, very nicely over the purple. So that was one of the reasons why I chose it. For the octopus, we're going to use some BV04, BV01, and then BV00. This is a favorite color combination of mine right now. It's a real bright and vibrant violet color. I have to say there aren't many violets in the Copic collection that I'm a fan of. This is probably one of the few combinations that I like. For a while, I liked the B60, 63, and 66, but that's a little bit too pale for me lately. And lately, I've been liking this more vibrant color combination. And then sometimes I will try to use some of the violet, so like V12 or 15 or 18, and I'll always end up disappointed. So not sure what it is. Maybe someday I'll like those colors, but for now they don't make me happy when I see them. Okay, so we're gonna give her some green eyeshadow because every little fortune teller octopus needs her green eyeshadow. And then we're going to color in her little scepter here with the same greens that we used for her eyeshadow. And then we're going to color in her jewelry as well. And then the staff there, we'll use some E43 and then E44. And then E47. Not sure where she got that wood from. Maybe there was a shipwreck or something. She's able to take some of the wood and build out her scepter with that. And for her crystal ball, I just used some BG10 there. And we're going to add some highlights and shadowing to the crystal ball at the end just to make it look more crystal ball-like or glass-like. Another option, if you want to really make your crystal ball pop, would be to add some glossy accents to it. You could also add some shimmer pen. Totally up to you what you want to do there. And we're going to add our little mounds of sand around our octopus as well, just like we did with a little shark from the last card. So I'm just starting with my little dots. And this time I'm using some E55. I don't know that was a color I used last time, but E55 is a color that sits really, really nicely between E35 and E31. I don't know if you're familiar with the E30s series with Copics, but there's a really big gap between E31 and E34. So it's hard to get them to blend together. And the E33, which is in between, is just kind of its own thing and doesn't really match well with either of them. But one solution I found is to kind of use that E55 as a little mediator between E31 and E34, or E31 and E35. And then I'm just adding those little flecks in the distance with my E31 just so they look like they appear far away and back in the distance. Sorry if I sound a little loopy. This is a longer video than I'm used to. So we're at the 24-minute mark. At this point, I've been talking to myself nonstop for 24 minutes. And now we are going to add the little highlights to our crystal ball. And I'm just going to use my BG10 there. And then use some colorless blender in the center just to make it pop a little. And I think that gives it just a nice special little something to make it look like glass. For the sentiment, this isn't really a Valentine's Day card, but I threw it in because it's pretty and it's a slim line card and I didn't know what else to do with it. You could definitely give it to a Valentine if you like. It says, "I see amazing things ahead." You could also give it to a friend for any occasion, like any kind of encouragement card. And that is it. So that is our Octopus Oracle card. And I also purchased these Slim Line envelopes from Trinity Stamps. So you can buy them in packages of rainbow colors if you want. So you have a special envelope when you go to mail your card. I actually don't know what happens yet. I haven't tried to mail one. I don't know what kind of postage you need for it. We'll have to see about that. Just adding some white highlights just to finish off the look. Just make her little jewelry there plop. Not plop, make it pop. And that's it. So those are our 4 cards, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed this Slimline card series for our Valentine series, and I will see you again soon with some more videos. Have a great day, and thanks so much for sticking with me to the end.